We're going to get started with just looking at page 30. It outlines some general administration procedures. There's two different ways you can administer this assessment. One is tabletop, where they sit right directly in front of you. The administrator is behind the table. You have your admin book and data sheet set up kind of similar to how I have it right now. And then the stimulus book is here. So that is option one. Option two is a floor corner administration, where your learner, you guys pick a corner in the room, they sit in the corner, and then the administrator is on the larger part of the area just for easier monitoring. The administration book and data sheet would also be set up very similar to the tabletop, but this is more common if they have a harder time sitting at the table. They might engage in more challenging behavior, and maybe you have some reinforcers down there in the area where they might require more frequent breaks. Page 32 outlines some other general guidance. So assessment time, it should take less than 90 minutes to complete this. However, it could take longer and vary based on age, functioning level of the individual, if they engage in any challenging behaviors, how often breaks are required, or if there's any scheduling complications during the school day. And then there's a section that goes over use of non-original assessment materials. So just make sure that you are using all of these materials as they are. Don't laminate, don't create any new pictures. Make sure that you try and have the positioning of all of these booklets and documents in a similar fashion as to how it's outlined on here. Just because it's a standardized assessment, we don't want to change anything in that process. And then let's see, start and discontinue rules. That's going to be different for every module. So I'm going to start with going over direct training and generalization. They have very similar discontinue cutoff criteria. So FLS, PLS, VCS, VMS, these are 4 subsections of direct training. Same with generalization, LLS, CMS, CPM, RPR. Make sure that you start with the direct training module. All of these should be in order when you administer it. So start with DT, and you want to go through every single question on here unless your learner gets all 16 incorrect within a subsection. So if they get at least 1 right here, but all of these are wrong in FLS, you're still going to have to go to PLS and continue until they get 16 wrong within this subsection. So if they get 16 wrong here, you're probably going to mark some kind of score on the first box, 0 in the total, and then you're going to go to generalization. So just because they got 16 wrong here, you still need to do each module no matter what. So same rules apply for generalization. It's going to be a little bit different for equivalence and transformation, and I will talk about that when I do those videos. There's also query responses in the assessment. So as you're looking through the administrator manual, you're going to see query in the middle. Some are left blank, you don't need to worry about it. But if there's a query where you're looking for them to point to PACS, and they say PACS, then the query means that you can say something else as a follow-up if they respond in a different way. So you can say, show me, you say, show me 1 time, and they have the opportunity to show you PACS instead of vocally telling you PACS. But you can only say the query 1 time. You don't want to repeat answers. There is some guidance in here for if your learner appears to not be paying attention, there's any challenging behavior, there's guidance in how you can represent the question 1 time. If they self-correct, there's guidance right here on page 36 of what you can say. You can say, you have made more than 1 response. Please tell me the one you believe is correct. And just remember, a maximum of 5 self-corrections in total across the entire PCA are acceptable. So after 5, those remaining self-corrections actually need to be scored as incorrect. And then lastly, on page 39, there is a distinction in color. So if you notice any black shaded areas on here, that means that you do not have the book open. Close the book, move it away from the learner, maybe flip this back so they don't see it. You don't want to have the book accessible to them. When it's white, that means that you will be showing them something within the book. So you do want to represent the book. And I'll demonstrate that in a little bit. As far as when you initially introduce this assessment to your learner, there's a script in here on page 40. So it reads, "Thank you for helping me out today and agreeing to complete this project. I'm going to ask you a variety of questions and your job is to respond with an answer that you think is correct. Some of these questions will be really easy and some may be more difficult. At times, I will be able to tell you if the responses you give me were correct, and at other times, I will not be able to tell you anything. Just keep working as hard as you can, and I will tell you when it is time for a break. We will take a lot of breaks, and this whole project will not take too long. If you get bored or tired, just keep working because a break will happen pretty soon. Do you have any questions?" So not every learner is going to fully grasp this information. So sometimes I'll make it a little short and sweet, and I'll just say, "Hey, thank you so much for helping me answer some questions today. If there's any questions that you don't know the answer to, just say, 'I don't know,' and we'll go to the next one. If you need a break, you can ask for a break and just work as hard as you can, but I can't tell you if the answers are right or wrong. Just do your best." I might do some kind of variation of that too. So page 43 is where the direct training module starts for the assessment, and page 44 is where you will start. So FLS, foundational learning skills, this is actually going to match your data sheet. So FLS, FLS. You're looking at FLS 1 right here. Everything matches. Same with the book. You're going to look here and see FLS 2. So if you're ever confused in things matching up, just try and look at the pages here and make sure that it all matches, because sometimes it can get confusing, especially if you're trying to move pretty fast with your learner. All right, let's get started. Look at me. Look. Where did the block go? Do this. Choose one. Do this. Do this. Do this. Do this. Say ah. Say book. Stand up. Say the dog is big. Jim says hi. What do you say? Which one of these is the same as this? Which one of these is the same as this? Which one of these is the same as this? So now we're on to PLS. Which one of these is the same as this? Show me the stuffed animal. Show me the toothbrush. Show me the bread. Show me the horse. Clap loudly. What is your name? What is this? What is this? Point to your knee. Show me the rectangle. Show me brown. Show me flower. Show me H. What is this? What color is this? All right, now we are on VCS. So we start with moving the book because it's black. Say ribbit. Stand up, turn around, and clap your hands. What comes next? L, M, N, O. What number is this? Which letter says mm? Which one is crying? Tell me something that has spots. Who is this? Which one is feeling wet? Which one does not belong? Bob's balloon popped. What might he be feeling? Which one is 9:30? What does it say? What group does this belong to? Where are they? Show me his head. Now we're on VMS 1. So we start on this row. And I just started randomly checking these off just to pretend like the student was getting them wrong. And also, just for reference, I'm counting in my head just the general amount of time that you should be spending on a question. So I usually am counting, like I'll read the question and I'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll go on to the next one. So this is just the general pace of how it should be. We shouldn't be spending a lot of time waiting for them to answer, repeating the questions, etc. So VMS 1, and then we will be done with DT. How much is this coin worth? Which one is 15 cents? How many dots are there? How many dots are there now? How much is it? If you were this tornado, how would you feel? What is 4 plus 0? Guess how many items are inside? Give the bunny a name based on what he looks like. What do you think is inside? Show me the traveler. The old dog is brown. Then remove the stimulus book. And then we wait 10 seconds. So 10, 10. Tell me what I just said. Tell me which one of these is also the same as this. Tell me 3 things about this. Which one of these is how I might be feeling right now if I was this? What might he be feeling right now? What do you think happens next? All right, so now we just finished DT and we're going to go on to G. All right, so now we are going to start generalization, which is on page 61 of the administrator manual. So you'll see LLS up here, LLS on the data sheet, and LLS 2 in the book. So I usually, when I need to close the book, I'll put my pen in between to make it easier. And let's start. So do this. Place them on your head. Can't see in one of the angles. What is it? Which one of these is blue? Count the birds. Which one of these is the jacket? Which one of these is the same as this? What color is this? Do this. Pretend you are an angry dog. Do this. Mouse. Draft. Which one of these is the same as this? Which one of these is lettuce? How is this person feeling? Which one of these is the bike? What is this? Say the same as me. Itka Vanek. Okay, we're on CMS now. Tell me 2 things I can do with a ruler. Find these 3 words somewhere here and show me with your finger where the words are. So just a disclaimer, if they get the first one wrong or they can't find it, or they're just scanning and doing this, I would just move on to the next one right away because they need to get all of them right in order for it to be correct. Which color makes a different path from A to B than the red line? Now, draw another and different path from A to B using your finger. So this is CMS 3, and they need to get both of those parts right in order for it to be correct. Who knows what the item is? This person is telling you how to fly an airplane. Should you believe him? Why not? Which one of these makes this? Show me where you should put the X to win the game. In which one of these rooms do you brush your teeth? Do this. Look at these. Wait. What did you see before? And just a reminder for the query, if client says 1 or 2 of the 3 correct items, you can also say, Can you name anything else to see if they get the second or third? Which shapes here do you need to make a rectangle? For each one, use all of the letters and descramble the word. Touch the letters on the keyboard to spell each word. So I'll usually like point to the top, and if they get this first one wrong, I'm just going to move on to the next one because they need to get all three of these right in order for it to be correct. Which one is in order from biggest to smallest? So in the instructions too, it says to point down to the options. So there's some guidance in here as well as to when you would point around the array, when you would point from side to side and point down. Don't worry about that too much. As you do this assessment more, things will come naturally to you and you'll remember. Use your finger to connect the dots. I was in the garden using my rake and I almost screamed when I saw a, which one? What are these? Now we are on CPM, page 70 of the manual. Which one does not belong? And if the learner says lamp, then you can say, show me, and they need to point. So there's some guidance in the manual as well for that. I'm not doing every single one, but just as you read through it in the future, the query is really helpful, and I recommend highlighting the middle just so that you can remember if you need to say any follow-up. What might you say to me? What can you say? Do you think there are more or less than 20 things inside? Show me the correct punctuation mark at the end of this sentence. So if they get this one wrong right away, just skip on to the next part, but keep going down to make sure that they get all three right. You are talking to Laura, but you don't know what she said. Tell me what would go here. Blank, did you say, Laura? How many syllables are in the word hippopotamus? Hippopotamus. What did the person use to make this? Tell me. Begin at the start and complete the maze by tracing it with your finger to the finish. Pretend to drive a car. What shape is the desktop? Which one of these would you wear to play basketball? Tell me. What do you do here? Look at these words. Cow, list, block. Now use the keyboard to spell cow. List, block. Touch the keys to make the number 400. 46, 789. And also in the query, something to note, if client begins to say numbers, say touch the numbers. You want them to touch it right here. So 400, 789, etc. What was that like? Which one of these is the stop sign? Now we're on RPR. So this is the last subsection of generalization. I need a teaspoon of sugar. Which one of these should I use to measure? Which one of these does not belong? I want the sun to come out at night. What was wrong with that sentence? How long will it be until 2 o'clock? Add the numbers and touch the buttons that show the answer. So they need to touch 5, 10, and 28. What is the distance in miles from the dot to the X along the red line? If the client says 2 or 3, then you can follow up with the query saying 2 what or 3 what. I need a drink of water. Which one of these can I use? Give this a name based on what it is used for. I am thinking of something that has 4 legs, black and white stripes, and a tail. What is it? It will rain today. I am hungry. I need an umbrella. Which one doesn't belong in the story? So just a reminder for RPR 10, there's an error in my book. It's saying that the correct response is to touch I am hungry, but you actually need them to vocally say I am hungry. That's okay. There's no actual picture page on here because it's highlighted in black. So just in case you guys are confused about that, that was an error in my book. All right, on to RPR 11. Which colors will make this color? And if they say blue and red and blue, you want them to show you. So you can, in the query, say, show me, and they have to show you. Which 2 houses here are different from this house? And in this question, they need to get both of these. If they just choose one, it's incorrect. They need to touch the left house and the middle house. Sarah has either eaten an apple or a cookie. She didn't eat an apple. Which did she eat? Tom has 5 chips and eats 2 of them. How many are left? What does this feel like? How much is this? And in the query, if they say 125, then you can say 125 what? Tell me in dollars and cents. And that is the end of the generalization module. All right, so now we're going to move on with equivalence. So this is the middle module. It's a lot smaller. For an example, just added up the DT and G sections. So we have 16, 10, 8, 13, 13, 12, 10, 14. So there was no subsection where they had gotten all of them incorrect. So in this example, we would have kept going through all of these questions. Now, there's a different criteria for the equivalence module. So if you were to get 2 in a row incorrect within each subscale, you would skip and go on to the next one. So I'm going to do an example very quickly. I'm going to do these 2 incorrect, these 2. So for example, these X's are incorrect. We were done with this subsection anyway, so we would have moved on to symmetry. So the person would have gotten 4 wrong. We go on to symmetry. Okay, they got 1 right, they got 2 wrong. We're gonna stop after they get 2 wrong in this section, and we're gonna go to TRS. So what I do when it's time to stop after they met that discontinue criteria, I just draw a line through it. So they would have only gotten one right in this section. But we still have to go to TRS. So we do TRS. They get the first two right. They get these two wrong. We stop after those two, and we move on to the last one. They get these two wrong initially. That means we completely stop the rest of this because they got two wrong in a row. So they would have gotten a score of 4, 1, 2, 0. So this is a little bit different from these sections and transformation. So cutoff criteria, 2 in a row for this. Alrighty, and I also, when I get to equivalence, it's usually when this book A is fully done. So I'll be, it's a good opportunity to offer praise. I'll be like, oh my gosh, you're working so hard and you're going so fast. We're like almost done. We're getting there. We're so quick. So I would use that as an opportunity to give some praise for persevering through all the questions. All right, page 80 in the administrator manual. All of the training and testing questions are in here. Same thing. If it's black, it means that you remove the book. If it's white, it means that there's some questions right here. This is the same as this. Now you try. Which one of these is the same as this? This is the same as this. Now you try. Which one of these is the same as this? Diz. Diz is the same as diz. Diz. Diz is not the same as bug. Now you try. Diz. Diz. Was that the same? Diz. Bug. Was that the same? Bug. Bug is the same as bug. Bug. Bug is not the same as diz. Now you try it. Bug. Diz. Was that the same? Bug. Bug. Was that the same? Now we're going to make sure it's matched up to REF 5 right here. We're at REF 5 right here. So we start with look. That is not the same. That is the same. Now you try. Look. Is that the same? Is that the same? Now we're on number 6. Look. That is not the same. That is the same. Now you try. Look. Is that the same? Is that the same? Disclaimer, these can get really confusing as you're flipping pages, so just make sure that A, B, C, D, E, and F are matching as you're flipping these pages and as you're reading it in the manual. Those have kind of tripped me up a couple times. All right, so that was REF. Now we're on to symmetry. Okay, this is the same as this. Which one here is the same as this? This is the same as this. Now you try. Which one of these is the same as this? Walter fecks when he is wob. Now you try it. What does Walter do when he is wob? Barb japs when she is wob. Now you try it. What does Barb do when she is wob? Now we're on symmetry, 5A. Look. This is the same. Look. This is not the same. Now you try. Look, is that the same? Is that the same? All right, now we're on number 6. Look, this is the same. Look, this is not the same. Now you try it. Look, is that the same? Is that the same? All right, now we're on transitivity 1, question 1. This is the same as this. This is the same as this. Now you try. Which one of these is the same as this? This is the same as this. This is the same as this. Now you try. Which one of these is the same as this? Where should you go when you are happy? To a Rix. A Rix is the same as a Yev. Now you try it. Where should you go when you are happy? Where else could you go? What do you need if you want to fly? A dag. A dag is the same as a pra. Now you try it. What do you need if you want to fly? What else could you use? Now we're on number 5. We're at 5A. Look, this is the same. This is a Jev. Now you try. What is this called? The client says a hot dog. You say, what else could you call it? And the correct answer would be a Jev. Look, this is the same. This is a Pem. Now you try. What is this called? What else could you call it? All right, now we're on equivalence, the last subsection of equivalence module. This is the same as this. These are the same as VIP. Now you try it. Which one of these is VIP? This is the same as this. These are the same as Yud. Now you try it. Which one of these is Yud? Rog is the same as a Bim. This is Rog. Now you try it. Read this story, but use a different word that is the same as the underlined word. Vax is the same as a Pob. This is Vax. Now you try it. Read this story, but use a different word that is the same as the underlined word. This is the same as this. This is the same as this. This is a bath.
Now you try it. Find 3 baths. So they would need to correctly say this one, and this one in order for the answer to be fully correct. This is the same as this. This is the same as this. This is a Jeff. Now you try it. Find 3 Jeffs. So correct response would be this, this, this.
All right, so now we're going to move on to the transformation module. So the top of your data sheet, the top transformation module is receptive and the bottom is expressive. So you're going to need the book for receptive, but expressive, you will only be reading questions from the manual. So we'll get through this book within these subsections. Also, just to note, there's a discontinue criterion on page 98. So if the 2 practice items, P1 and P2, or 3 consecutive test items are scored incorrect, discontinue coordination and proceed to comparison. Any remaining unanswered items should be scored incorrect. So what that looks like is you're going to have core P1 and core P2. These are the only times where you can give feedback. And once you get to testing, you'll see just the normal core 1. That's when you're not able to give feedback anymore. So they need to get at least one of these correct in order to move to testing. If they get both of these correct, they move on to testing. If they get neither of these correct, you're not even going to move forward with this. So let's say they get the training questions incorrect. The training ones aren't even on here, but if these 2 are wrong, I will just scratch out this entire section. But I have to move on to COM. So I would just flip through the pages and I would start at comparison. I asked my 2 practice training questions, P1, P2. If it's correct, at least one of them, then I would go to the test question. If it's incorrect, both of them are wrong, I cross out this line and I move on to opposition. So hopefully you guys kind of get the gist of that, but the guidance is in the book if you ever want to read it before you implement this with one of your students. So again, COR matches on your data sheet. COR will match at the bottom right here.
The training questions, usually the gray means that it's training. This is the same as this. Now you try it. Which one here is the same as this one? Nice job, that's correct. We're gonna do a few more games like this, so keep responding correctly. And in the admin manual, it says what to do if they have a correct response, what kind of feedback you can give. If they are incorrect, then you would say, make sure to notice how these squares are the same. And you move on to practice number 2. This is the same as this. Now you try it. Which one here is the same as this one? That's correct. We will do a few more of these games, so keep responding correctly. Which one of these is the same as this? And in the query, it says if they say apple, you need to say show me. So I'm not going to do every query, but just as an example, you might want to highlight these. Which one of these is the same as this? Which one of these is the same as this? Which one of these is the same as this? Which one of these is the same as this? Which one of these is the same as this? This is the same as this. 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 So in the instructions too, the training, It does say to repeat both training directions twice more. So that's why you want to do it 2 times. So I'll do that again. This is the same as this. 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 Now you try it. Which one of these is the same as this? This is the same as this. 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 Now you try it. Which one of these is the same as this? Sometimes when I do the first instruction, if they're kind of over it and they're like, oh my God, stop saying it twice, I'll ask them to say it with me the second time so they remain engaged. This is the same as this. This is the same as this. Now say it with me. This is the same as this. This is the same as this. Now you try it. Which one of these is the same as this? This is the same as this. 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 Now you try. Which one of these is the same as this? If you would like the same stuff as, which one of these would you choose? My name is. Which would you choose to write my name? Which one of these is the same as this? Which one of these is the same as this? Which one of these comes next in the pattern? Which one of these is next in the pattern? All right, now we are on to comparison. So again, you have your 2 train questions in the beginning. This is more than this and this. Now you try it. Which one here is more? Yeah, that's correct. We're going to do a few more of these same games now, so keep responding correctly. This is smaller than this and this. Now you try it. Which one here is smaller? That's correct. We're going to do a few more of these games, so keep responding correctly. Which one here is more? Which one here is less? Which one here is biggest? Which one here is fastest? Which one here is shortest? Which one here is worst? So sometimes I'll scan like this and sometimes I'll point. I don't think there's really a big deal of whatever you decide to do, but just giving different examples. This is the same as this. 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 Now you try it. Which one of these is more? This is the same as this. 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 Which one of these is less? This is the same as this. 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 Now you try it. Which one of these is less? This is the same as this. 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 Now you try it. Which one of these is more? Which one of these is your best friend? Which one of these would be 5 if the other two were 20? Which one of these tastes best? Which one of these would I lose playing soccer? Which one of these is the smallest tree? Which one of these weighs the most? Oh my gosh, you're on a roll right now. Look at, you did all of these questions. You're a rock star. Now we're on opposition. Same criteria. These are the train questions now. This is opposite of this. Now you try. Which one here is opposite of this? Ooh, make sure to notice how the black square and the white square are opposite. So that's what you'd say if it was in front. This is opposite of this. Now you try. Which one here is opposite of this? That's correct. We'll do a few more of these games now, so keep responding correctly. Which one here is opposite of this? 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 This is the same as this. 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 Now you try it. Which one of these is opposite of this? This is the same as this. 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 Now you try it. Which one of these is opposite of this? This is the same as this. 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 Now you try it. Which one of these is opposite of this? This is the same as this. 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 Now you try. Which one of these is opposite of this? Which one of these is the opposite of what is needed to complete the pattern? Which one of these is the opposite of what is needed to complete the pattern? Which two of these are opposite of what is needed to complete the pattern? So in this example, they would need to say TIG and the purple circle in order for it to be correct. Which one of these is the opposite of this? If this were hot, which one of these words is the opposite? It would be dir. But they need to point, not show, or not say it. If this were fast, which one of these is the opposite? Now we're on distinction. So DIS, PR1. And that's also on page 121 of your manual. This is different from this. Now you try. Which one here is different from this? Ooh, make sure to notice how the black square and the white circle are opposite. Okay, hold up. That incorrect response said opposite, but it's supposed to be probably different language. These are different. So I think that's an error in the manual as well. You guys might say, yours might say opposite, but it might say different. Anyway, this is different. Okay, we're on number 2. This is different from this. Oh my gosh, now I'm jumbled up. Sorry, guys. Okay, let's restart. I was reading the manual and now I'm also getting mixed up. So this does happen during the assessment. That is okay because there's a lot of words and there's a lot going on that you have to pay attention to. You're paying attention to the manual, flipping the book, you're paying attention to the data sheet, you're paying attention to what to read. So it's okay if you don't get it perfect as you're doing this in the beginning. All right, so PR2. This is different from this. Now you try. Which one here is different from this? That's correct. We will do a few more of these games, so keep responding correctly. So now we are on the test questions. So DIS 1. Which one here is different from this? 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 This is the same as this. 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 Now you try. Which one of these is different than this? This is the same as this. 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 Now you try. Which one of these is different from this? This is the same as this. 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 Now you try it. Which one of these is different than this? This is the same as this. 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 Now you try. Which one of these is different from this? Which two of these are different from this? So the answer would be these two. Which two of these are different from this? The answer would be these two. Which two of these are different from this? These two. The answer. Which two of these are different from this? All right, now we are on hierarchy. This is where I get tripped up. So you point at the white circle at the top of the page, and then you point to the largest white circle. So it gives you instructions on which one to point to. So you say, this is contained within this. Now you try it. Which one here contains this? Make sure to notice how the white circle on top can be put inside of the largest white circle. So you say that if they get it incorrect. This contains this. Now you try it. Which one here is contained within this? That's correct. We will do a few more of these games, so keep responding correctly. Now we're on the test questions. This is now where we can't give feedback anymore. Which one here is contained within this? Which one here is contained within this? Which one here is part of this? Which one here contains this? Which one here is a part of this? Which one here is contained by this? Which one here contains this? This is the same as this. 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 Now you try it. Which one of these contains this? This is the same as this. 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 Now you try it. Which one of these is a part of this? Which one here is a part of this? Which one here contains this? This is the same as this. 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 Now you try it. Which one of these contains this? This is the same as this. 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 Now you try it. Which one of these is part of this? Which one here is part of this? Which one here contains this? Which one here contains this? All right, now we're moving on to the last section of the receptive module. But kind of like I said, that hierarchy one kind of trips me up because you really have to pay attention to the which one is part of this, which one contains this. So it can be tricky at times with that one. All right. The boy sees this. Now you try. Which one here does the boy see? That's correct. We're going to do a few more of these games now, so keep responding correctly. The mommy sees this. Now you try. Which one here does the mommy see? That's correct. We're going to do a few more of these games, so keep responding correctly. Now we are going to test DTC 1. Which one here does the turtle see? Which one here does the chicken see? If the turtle was the chicken and if the chicken was the turtle, which one here does the turtle see? If the turtle was the chicken and if the chicken was the turtle, which one here does the chicken see? This is here. This is there. This is here. This is there. Now you try it. Which one of these is there? This is here. This is there. This is here. This is there. Now you try. Which one of these is here? If here were there and if there were here, which one of these would be here? If here were there and if there were here, which one of these would be there? I planted a small plant before and it grew big after. Which one of these is after? I planted a small plant before and it grew big after. Which one of these is before? I planted a small plant before and it grew big after. If before was after and after was before, which one of these is after? I planted a small plant before and it grew big after. If before was after and after was before, which one of these is before? If I were you and you were me and I was sad and you were happy, which one of these is you? If I were you and you were me and I was sad and you were happy, which one of these is me? If I were you and you were me and I lost my dog and you had a party, which one of these is you? If I were you and you were me and yesterday was today and today was yesterday and you were sad today but not yesterday, which one of these is not me today? And that is the trickiest one ever.
Now we're done with this book. We're done with all of the receptive. So what we would do is we would score this. You can take a break in between the receptive and expressive if they need to. But then next you would just go through the expressive assessment starting on page 145.
All right, so for the last one, this will be the transformation module expressive. And you're just going to read exactly word for word from the manual. The same criteria will be as for receptive as well. So you're going to have 2 train questions where you can give feedback, and then you start at testing. If they get 3 wrong in a row within a section, you move on to the next section. All right, COR P1. This is where we'll start. Say the same as me. Ah, that's correct. We're going to do a few more of these games now, so keep responding correctly. Say the same as me. Bow. Good. Yeah, that's correct. We're going to do more like this. Say the same as me. Mom. Say the same as me. Farm. Say the same as me. Pig. Say the same as me. I like to dance. Say the same as me. Where did Bob go? Say the same as me. How are you today? Which the same as pencil, crayon, or kite? Which is the same as a house, toaster, or tent? Which is same as grass, sand, or jelly? How are a ball and a bubble the same? How is a puzzle and a recipe the same? How is a sign and a website the same? If cug is same as snow, how are cug and a cloud the same? If chicken is same as mocks, how are mocks and pizza the same? If cov is the same as quub and quub is the same as a tree, How are cove and corn the same? If Faz is the same as two and Faz is the same as a policeman, how is two and a mommy duck the same? Now we're on comparison. Say something that is bigger than a cookie. Can you tell me something that is a lot bigger than a cookie? A bike is a lot bigger than a cookie. Let's try another one. So that was the example for if I need to do the query and they have an incorrect response. What is above your head? Can you tell me something that is really far above your head? Yeah, that's correct. We'll do a few more of these games now, so keep responding correctly. What is bigger than a baby? What is smaller than a house? What is greater than $1? What is taller than a giraffe? Can you tell me something that is a lot taller than a giraffe? What is worse than a cut on your finger? What is better than two pieces of candy? If they say any food item or any non-food item, then in the query, it gives you a guidance on what to say. You can say, tell me something you eat that is better than two pieces of candy. Which is slower, a turtle or a car? Which is stronger than string, paper or chain? Which is lighter than brick, a refrigerator or feather? How is a rain shower better than a tornado? How is a car able to move faster than a bike? How is being hungry worse than being full? How is a ball more fun than homework? If Dex comes before July and July comes before Tab, put July, Dex, and Tab in order from first to last. If Gub is greater than 5 and 5 is greater than Wem, tell me which one is the smallest. If Pob is lighter than a book and a book is lighter than the Sep, is Sep or Pob the heaviest?
So, for example, so far for COR and COM, I just pretended that they got number 12 wrong, so we would have skipped 13, 14, 15, and 16. So then we go to comparison. We ask all the questions. There are not 3 incorrect in a row, so we would have had to go through every single question. So you're going to do the same thing for the opposition frame. You have 2 practice questions, then test. Same with distinction. And there's also some queries in here too. So this should be a lot easier to manage when you're not having to flip through pages and everything. So I'm just going to discontinue after those 2 subsections, but just wanted to give a little example of how you would ask the questions. I went a little bit faster in this example, but usually I would do the same thing throughout the entire assessment. You should have an Excel spreadsheet on your drive that's shared with you. You either have your own individual drive, your own teacher drive, or you also have that and access to the community drive. And if you have that Excel sheet, you just punch in these scores here, and it will automatically do this for you. So you actually will not need to worry about this during the assessment. These are questions that are in relation to your behavioral observations of your student during the assessment. This is not outside of the assessment. You want to score this, everything that you observed during the assessment, to see if the frequency and intensity of certain behaviors may have impacted the believability of, their true scores. So if they have higher scores for challenging behavior, for example, on the index here, then it might tell you that that may have impacted the scores on the assessment if they scored lower. So there's a social interaction section, communication section, restricted and repetitive behaviors. When you score all of this, this is also in a tab in that Excel spreadsheet that you have access to, and it'll automatically calculate. So this is more so based on your subjective experience with the student. And then on the back, it also gives you some information as to some possible maintaining variables. So when we look at some functions of behavior, why behavior might be occurring, it outlines attention, escape, non-social, physical, and tangible reasons. So if they were trying to escape the assessment, that might be higher. If they're trying to seek attention from the assessor, attention from other students, your answers here will help give you an idea as to maybe why some of those behaviors were happening and some of those maintaining variables. So I recommend doing this. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
All right, so right here I have an example peak comprehensive assessment Excel spreadsheet. You'll see some tabs on the bottom. So right now we're on the cover sheet. This is where you will put your individual student's name, date of birth, assessor, assessment date, and age. This is the scoring sheet here. So that purple packet that I had just demonstrated scoring on manually, you'll just transfer all of that information onto this sheet and it will automatically calculate the totals for each module. And then that factor scoring that I told you not to worry about, right here on the right side, you can see my mouse, the module factor scores, that will calculate for you. This is the PAS BOS spreadsheet, so you'll just transfer that information onto here as well, or you can just automatically input the scores on here. You don't even have to worry about filling it out on that sheet, whatever works best for you if you want to keep paper copies too. And once you have all of the numbers input, it'll automatically generate programs that your learner already mastered out of. The highlighted programs will be programs that you wouldn't really want to start with for programming because those were programs similar to the questions that they had answered correctly during the assessment. Now, this pyramid is a great representation if you want to see all the programs, but if you just click on the green direct training tab, it shows all of the DT programs and it'll highlight what they mastered out of, as well as generalization, equivalence, and transformation. Now, this is one example of a student who had received the PCA. Initial DT scores showed that he got a 3 on the first section. He got all 16 incorrect in the second section, so we had discontinued the DT module and moved on to generalization. We went to the first module, he got a 3, then he scored a 1 on the next one, 0 in the third, so we stopped and we moved on to equivalence. He got 2 wrong initially in each section, so we discontinued thereafter. He scored all 0s on equivalence. When we went to transformation, all of these were left blank because we had done the training questions and he scored both of the training questions wrong in the beginning where we can give feedback. So we didn't even get to implementation of the test questions. There was one domain in the expressive module where he got one of the training questions right. So we moved on and he scored a 4 in this section, but everything else scored 0s. So if we take a look at his recommended programming, or if there's any programs that he mastered out of, we can go to the pyramid. So we see a few that are highlighted, but pretty much all the programs are up for grabs at this point. Same with DT. There's a few highlighted on here. Generalization, there's a few. Equivalence. We can pretty much start from the very beginning and with most of these modules for this learner. And then if we go to the PAS BOS, we have that completed on here too. So everything just automatically calculated for the scores. We were just responsible for making sure we did a 0, 1, or 2 in each section. Now moving on to another learner. He scored a little bit higher than the other one previously, so we might see more programs highlighted. So if we go to the pyramid, this is what it might look like. He scores a little bit higher. Then we have the separate DT. So we would not want to start with any of these highlighted programs. We'd want to start looking at 1B to 3D, 4D, 4E, 5A, 5H, and we'd find the ones that were most relevant for what we can at least start with. Same with generalization. So those highlighted ones, we'd start looking maybe at 4E, and we'd also see what's relevant to the IEP goals that he's working on, some of the standards for his grade level, and go from there. Equivalence, he mastered out of a few, so maybe we'd start looking at 3A. And all the transformation programs are up for grabs for him. Lastly, this programs level tab is going to outline peak programs by difficulty. So it'll show level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4 programs for each module. So direct training will be green, generalization is red, equivalence is blue, transformation is yellow. So every student's programming is going to look a little different. It's going to be based on their assessment score for the PCEA, but it'll also include their skill deficits, their language abilities, classroom environment and structure, any kind of behavioral challenges. So with this student example, there's very few that are actually highlighted that they mastered out of. So I would recommend that we probably start implementing some level 1 and or level 2 programs. Level 3 and 4 would probably be very difficult for them. So there's plenty of D, G, E, and T programs that we could start with within level 1 and 2. And then maybe if we have a learner who, they start mastering a lot of these, a lot of the level 1 and 2 are highlighted, maybe we'd start implementing some more difficult level 3 and level 4 programs. But for this one in particular, I'd recommend 1 and 2. And then just make sure that you have a nice balance of programs. So Dr. Dixon had given a good rule of thumb is have at least 50% of your programs consist of equivalence and transformation. And then have no more than 50% include direct training and generalization. So I'd say a good 50-50 between DT and G, E and T would be best. So even if you're implementing 4 programs initially, maybe you'd start with 1 DT, 1 G, 1 E, and 1 T. Or maybe you just want to do some generalization programs. So do 2 generalization and do a couple equivalents, 2 and 2. Just make sure that you're pulling from most of the categories, or at least you have these E and T in there somewhere. I know they're more difficult to implement, but these are what's also going to help your learner derive new information that wasn't previously taught. And that's really where you start teaching your learner how to learn. I've also thought about how to incorporate direct training into the classroom. So maybe you actually find direct training programs that are relevant to a lot of students in your classroom, and you find a way to incorporate these DT goals with all of your students. And maybe you just do generalization, equivalence, and transformation one-on-one with your student. So there's other ways that you can get creative. Reach out to me, Rachel, reach out to your district point of contact. And we'd be happy to help figure out programming because every learner is going to look completely different.